The soft hum of the anti-gravity stabilizers filled the classroom as Professor Zixthar adjusted his optical sensors, surveying the diverse array of species seated before him. The Galactic Academy prided itself on inclusivity, accepting students from hundreds of civilized worlds across the known universe. But even Zixthar, with his 40 cycles of teaching experience, felt his chromatophores ripple with anxiety as he noticed the seating arrangement that had just occurred. William Chen, the human boy from Earth, that notorious death world, sat calmly in the third row, his primitive binocular eyes focused on the holographic display at the front of the class. Beside him, having just settled into the adjacent seat with predatory grace, was Maya, a young Krathxi, one of the apex predators from the hunting moons of Velcora. Zixthar's 3 hearts began beating in an uncoordinated rhythm. The Krathxi were formidable. Standing nearly 7 feet tall even in their adolescent stage, they possessed retractable claws that could shred duralloy-enhanced reflexes that put most species to shame, and a hunting instinct honed by millions of years of evolution on a world where only the deadliest survived. Maya's golden eyes, with their vertical slits, had tracked William's movements the moment he'd entered the classroom 2 weeks ago. And now she'd chosen to sit beside him. The protocol was clear. When a predator species showed territorial or hunting interest in another student, intervention was required. But Zixthar hesitated, his tentacles twitching uncertainly. Humans were classified as prey species by most galactic standards, bipedal, relatively small, lacking natural weapons or armor. Yet Earth held the dreaded red-black designation, Deathworld, Class XII. William didn't seem concerned. He pulled out a primitive paper notebook, how quaint, how backwards, and began sketching something while waiting for class to begin. The other students maintained a careful distance from both of them. The Glimmerwings clustered near the environmental controls, their crystalline forms refracting the classroom lights. The Pluthari delegates occupied the back row, their multiple limbs folded in postures of polite discomfort. Maya leaned slightly toward William, her nostrils flaring as she took in his scent. Her tail, thick and muscular, coiled beneath her desk with predatory anticipation. "You smell different from the others," she said, her voice a low purr that carried the natural threat of her species. "Like copper and ozone and something wild." William glanced up from his drawing, utterly unfazed. "Yeah, you smell like my aunt's cat. She had this big Maine Coon named Sergeant Whiskers." Zixthar nearly dropped his data slate. Did this human child just compare a Krathxi hunter to a domesticated pet? The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as Maya's pupils contracted to dangerous slits. "A cat." Maya's claws extended slightly, scratching against the desk's surface with an ominous sound. "You compare me to some prey creature." "Predator, actually," William corrected, still focused on his sketch. "Earth cats are obligate carnivores. Sergeant Whiskers once brought my aunt a whole rabbit. Well, half a rabbit, she ate the other half." He looked up, meeting Maya's golden eyes with his own dark brown ones. "You kind of move like her too, all fluid and controlled, like you're always ready to pounce." The classroom had gone silent. Even the Glimmerwings had stopped their characteristic chiming. Maya stared at the human for a long moment, and Zixthar prepared to activate the emergency containment fields. But then something unexpected happened. Maya's ears, which had been flattened against her skull in aggression, slowly rotated forward. Her tail began a slow, rhythmic swaying that among Krathxi indicated curiosity. "Your world has predators?" she asked, a hint of genuine interest creeping into her voice. "Oh man, tons," William said, warming to the subject. He turned his notebook around, revealing a surprisingly detailed sketch of a great white shark. "This is just one. We've got sharks, lions, tigers, bears, crocodiles, leopards, wolves, eagles, snakes, some of them venomous enough to kill you in minutes, spiders the size of dinner plates, jellyfish that can stop your heart." "Spiders?" Maya leaned closer, examining the drawing. "Are those the small creatures with many legs?" Yeah, but not all of them are small. Ever heard of a Goliath bird-eater? It's a spider that hunts birds. Birds, Maya, flying creatures. William flipped the page, revealing more sketches. A saltwater crocodile, a Kodiak bear, a cassowary. And these are just the animals. We've also got plants that eat meat, microscopic organisms that cause plagues, weather patterns that can level entire cities. Zixthar watched in fascination and horror as William continued his enthusiastic catalog of Earth's dangers. The boy spoke about apex predators the way other students discussed homework, casual, familiar, almost fond. Your species lives among all these threats. Maya's tail had begun a different motion now, one that Zixthar recognized as the Krathxi equivalent of being impressed. How do you survive? William shrugged. We're pretty good at surviving. My dad says it's because we're stubborn. My mom says it's because we're too dumb to know when to quit. He grinned, a display of teeth that, in hindsight, looked far more predatory than Zixthar had initially registered. I think it's because we're adaptable. We can eat almost anything, live almost anywhere, and we're really, really good at making tools. Tools? Maya tilted her head, a gesture remarkably similar to the human expression of confusion. Yeah, we're not as strong as a bear or as fast as a cheetah, but we made spears and bows and guns. We can't fly like eagles, but we built airplanes and rockets. We're not naturally suited for underwater, but we invented submarines and diving gear. William's eyes had taken on an intense gleam. We looked at every predator on our planet and said, I can do better than that. The classroom remained utterly silent. Zixthar realized he had stopped breathing, or rather, stopped cycling air through his respiratory spiracles. This wasn't prey behavior. This was something far more unsettling. Maya sat back in her seat, studying William with a new expression. Her aggressive posture had completely dissolved, replaced by something Zixthar had rarely seen in a Krathxi: respect. I chose to sit here because you smell like prey, Maya admitted, her voice quiet enough that only those nearby could hear. I thought you would be amusing, easy to intimidate. And now? William asked, no malice in his voice, just curiosity. Maya's lips pulled back, revealing her impressive fangs in what humans would call a smile, though on a Krathxi, the expression carried far more teeth. Now I think I chose well for different reasons. I have never met someone from a world that makes Velcora seem tame. Your world isn't tame. We have 3 predator species that compete for dominance: the Krathxi, the Shadow Stalkers, and the Void Serpents. Our history is written in blood and hunting rights. Maya's claws retracted completely. But we do not have poisonous plants or weather that destroys cities or microscopic plague bringers. Your world sounds horrible, William suggested. Magnificent, Maya corrected. Terrifying and magnificent. Your species must be extraordinary hunters to survive such a place. William considered this. We're okay at hunting, but we're better at persistence. We don't give up, ever. There's this thing called persistence hunting. We just chase prey until it collapses from exhaustion. We can run for days if we need to. We sweat to cool down, which means we can keep going long after other predators have to stop. You hunt by refusing to stop. Maya's ears were fully forward now, her entire posture radiating fascination. That is horrifying. Yeah, well, we also domesticated wolves into dogs, so now we have predators that hunt with us. And we created agriculture so we don't always have to hunt. And we built cities and computers and went to space even though our planet kept trying to kill us with volcanoes and earthquakes and hurricanes and... Enough! Zixthar finally found his voice, though it came out as more of a squeak than he'd intended. Every student in the class turned to look at him. Perhaps we should begin today's lesson. But he couldn't quite shake the image from his mind. A young Krathxi predator, one of the most feared species in the known galaxy, looking at a human child with something approaching awe. As the class progressed, Zixthar noticed other changes. Maya and William worked together on the quantum mechanics problem sets, their different perspectives creating surprisingly elegant solutions. When Maya's natural aggression flared during a debate about resource allocation, William didn't flinch. Instead, he met it with calm logic and an occasional joke that diffused the tension. And when a Glimmerwing student made a dismissive comment about predator species and their violent tendencies, both Maya and William turned to stare at the speaker with such unified intensity that the crystalline being actually cracked slightly from stress. By the end of class, they had exchanged contact information and made plans to study together. As the students filed out, Zixthar overheard Maya ask, "Would you tell me more about Earth's predators? About this Sergeant Whiskers and the bird-eating spiders?" "Sure," William replied easily. "And maybe you can tell me about shadow stalkers and void serpents. They sound awesome." Zixthar watched them leave together, the predator cub and the Deathworld girl. No, wait, the Deathworld boy and the predator girl, and felt his chromatophores shift to the color of philosophical contemplation. Perhaps the galaxy had it wrong. Perhaps humans weren't prey at all. Perhaps they were something far stranger and more dangerous, a species that had clawed its way to the top of a Deathworld's food chain not through fangs or claws, but through stubbornness, ingenuity, and an absolute refusal to accept their limitations. And perhaps, he thought as he began preparing for his next class, the most terrifying thing about humans wasn't their capacity for violence or their Deathworld origins. It was their ability to make friends with predators and turn them into allies. Zixthar made a note to recommend increased security protocols, not to protect students from William, to protect everyone from what William and Maya might accomplish together.